Financial literacy. That's a complicated question. I'll give anybody that's listening right now the secrets that you'll find in every book.
Mhm.
You increase your income, decrease your expenses, and you invest the difference.
Hi, Lawrence. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Hey, what's going on? How's everybody doing?
It's doing great, great. It's so awesome to have you. Thank you for your time. Please tell everybody about you.
About me. Wow, that goes all the way back. Well, first of all, I live in Washington, D.C., but by way of Miami, Florida, by way of Haiti, Port-au-Prince, Delma, Haiti. So basically, that's my heritage. I'm Haitian American. I've been living here for the last 10 years. It's been
Bonjour. Comment
fun.
ça va?
Yeah, tu parles français. And I also will follow un poquito português. So
Nice.
there's a little bit of that too. I'm really trying to study and do that as well. I'm here with my wife and our dog. We live
Nice.
here. We love it. I work a 9 to 5. I'm a federal auditor by trade.
Nice.
And beyond that, I love to teach people personal finance and financial literacy. And that's basically probably my passion. There is like, hey, I do the other stuff for 9 to 5 for actual pay, but my real passion to understand personal finance, see how it could go, and also to prove to the world you could become a millionaire in your lifetime if you actually employ some of these techniques.
Wow. Yeah, we'll get to the financial literacy part. So you also have your website, right? The Neighborhood Finance Guy.
Yes, do have a website. It is out there. It is live. It is running. My wife actually created the website in 2020.
I I,
I
re- I read
populated.
I read it
I,
on your website. You say actually my wife created.
yeah, it's good.
I didn't
I love to
mention.
give credit where credit is due. That's something about me as well. And she did create it because I always kind of had some either write-ups or anything articles that I put on LinkedIn. But ultimately, she motivated me to put it actually on the website. So I started to do that, and the website has over 400 blog posts that deals with all facets of personal finance, from budgeting, cash flow, investing 101, so on and so forth, and even guest posts, as well as you could find a podcast that me and my friends run called The Financial Griot, which
Okay.
the entire idea is to really teach people, yet again, how to build wealth in a way that's more manageable, and also about sharing the stories that we have in between. So there's a lot of tools on there as well. They're basically all available for free. And there's over like 65 downloadable content, from anything from your tax to make you more tax efficient, to build wealth quicker, to have a budget that, especially when people that are struggling with making a budget, giving them the tools and all the access necessary to know what this game of wealth is all about. So we have a good time. We have a lot of fun. And this is why the resource exists.
Wow. It's a great website, actually. You have a podcast, like you said, the resources, and you are very transparent. I saw, a table here where you put in, annual net
Yeah.
worth tracking sheet.
Yeah, that was also part of it as well. I didn't grow up around people with a lot of money anyways. I grew up in Miami. Most people still to this day make our average household makes around $40,000 a year.
Mhm.
And nobody ever explained to us how to build wealth. And the people that were successful never actually showed any form of how do you do it.
Yeah.
They kind of pop up at the back end, say, I'm successful, I'm rich, like me. But I kind of want to know exactly how do you get from point A to point B. And to be fully transparent, I started documenting this on the website. So every year you can see how our net worth grows, changes. Some years, most of the years have always been positive for the last couple of years, anyways, because we're building into our personal finance plan. And that plan that I created is also available in the resources, yet again, for free, that you can actually utilize, and you will see that your net worth will grow over time. So it starts off in 2012 where my net worth was negative $125,000. And
Mhm.
that's why they had the asterisk, because at that time I wasn't really tracking as well as I am now. But I had that much in student loan debt. I didn't have
Wow.
any assets. I just had nothing but debt and a little bit of, I believe, like $5,000 worth of credit card debt. So
Wow.
over the years, I kept on building, working on it, paying down my debt, knowing the ropes of what it is to actually build wealth. And over time, you'll find that our net worth went all the way up to 800,000.
Wow.
Um, so I guess if you click on I guess 2023, the estimated 2023, it'll take you into 2023, the year, and you'll track monthly as to exactly what's going on with our net worth as well. So every month it grows. So right now it's at 830,000. I think that was the latest.
Wow.
And our estimate was like, hey, we might be going to 825, but we already exceeded that. We're likely going to end at 900,000 for the year, and next year we're going to be millionaires. And that all happened in the scope of
Wow.
like what, from negative 125K in 2012 to a millionaire in 2024. It's a pretty rapid pace.
Wow.
And all of it is not just me, you know, kind of putting information to say, hey, this is me. I'm sharing links, videos, people I follow, information that could really change your life throughout there. And all the links work. They will take you to sites that are in recommendations that could really change your life.
Wow. This is so awesome. Thank you for being so transparent, sharing this. Wow. I'm really impressed.
Yeah, it's been kind of crazy. I look at everybody, it's like, because another thing about me too, maybe I'm a little bit of a jerk in that sense. Because a lot of people around me always said it was impossible. And I said, well, maybe it's not impossible. It might be improbable. That means there's still a chance. There's still a way that we could go about doing things. And when nobody believes it, I'm like, I'm just going to post it around. So years from now, when somebody says, well, nobody ever told me how to build wealth, I'm like, well, I told you. I shared it to you all the time. You
That's
just
true.
didn't want to do it. So it comes down to the will of the person. You have to want this, you know, for yourself. You have to want to build wealth. You got to want to be successful. And even if you don't want to, you have to also acknowledge within yourself that, hey, maybe you don't want it.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, just say it, because that's the most powerful thing you can do.
Yeah. Wow. So financial literacy,
Yes.
is something that's very hot right now. Everybody's talking about it. What it is, why it's important.
Financial literacy. That's a complicated question, but I'll probably take it from the top. I'll give anybody that's listening right now the secrets that you'll find in every book. It's in three parts. You increase your income, you decrease your expenses, and you invest the difference. Let me explain. You increase your income wherever you get a chance to, as far as your job, multiple, you know, a side hustle, whatever that's going to bring more money into your household. That's how you increase your income. On top of that, being actually present, alert, and focused at your job to be able to earn a promotion, a raise, so on and so forth, looking for opportunities. The second, decrease your expenses, which is the problem for a lot of people, especially in the West. The idea is you're decreasing all these unintentional expenses, things that are just populating. I've heard multiple people that have like all the apps instead of just one or two apps. Like hey, I have Disney Plus. They have Disney Plus, Hulu, HBO Max, Amazon Prime. So all of that adds back up to basically the cost of cable all over again, or even way more than cable now. So you're seeing people just pile on unnecessary expenses. And if you start cutting down those expenses to what you really love, you'll find that you'll have more money to invest the difference. In that category, which is part three, investing the difference, the third part. The third part, you invest the difference within yourself, either through your education or through your networks, being your friends, and also the person that you end up in a relationship with or get married to. Those are the primary relationships that you need to foster and grow in order for you to become wealthy. Second, you invest in your retirement accounts or even the overall stock market. That's another position you could actually invest in. You invest in actually owning a home. A lot of people are saying, oh yeah, I want to rent because somebody online told me that I should rent. No, everybody should be pushing towards home ownership because that's an access to wealth. And on top of that, the final piece, which is not available for everyone because it's not in everybody's wheelhouse, is owning or building a small business. If you build a small business, you could create more cash revenue for yourself. So these are the top three things you'll find in every book that I've read for the last 10 years. I could tell you this is not the most this is not the most expansive thing about personal finance, but this is all three. You increase your income, you decrease your expenses, and you invest the difference. That's it.
Yeah,
so
I like the fact that you made it very simple, So even a child can understand that. Increase your income. You said, you can have a raise at your job, maybe have a second job. Then decrease your expenses. Talk about all these, subscriptions, all these apps you're using. So how do you do budgeting? How do you like track your expenses? Because most
How?
people, like you said, when they increase their income, actually they increase their expenses. They don't decrease.
Yeah, they call that lifestyle creep. And I guess there's always like these philosophies behind personal finance that just ends up being part of the wording.
Mm,
So there's this idea of this is other term called hedonic treadmill. I always thought this was the funniest thing I ever heard, because if you have a big house,
mhm.
it necessitates that you have a big TV, which necessitates that you have bigger furniture. You can't have a nice house with a big TV without the nice furniture, and then the car that's inside in front of the house, it has
Mhm,
to be nicer too. So
mhm,
people end up lifestyle creeping themselves into more and more debt a long term for the rest of their lives.
mhm.
On average, a single person could be paying as much as $300,000 worth of interest in their lifetime, but a family over the course of 40, 50 years will be paying at least $500,000 of interest. We have the numbers, we have the data, we've seen it. And the reason why is because people are not tracking their expenses. You
Mhm.
could literally do this for free now, give or take any different app like mint.com. It's an app by Intuit. It's pretty much free. It's,
How,
well, I
how
don't
you
say it's pretty much, it's
how you
actually free.
how you call the app?
Mint.com. Mint.
Mint.com.
Yes,
Yeah.
Mint, mint.com. And there's other apps like Empower. People typically want to do it on, they could even write it down like pen and paper, or could even use Microsoft Excel to
So,
do their budget. But there's always a way that you need to track, because what is not measured does not grow.
mm,
And if you don't know exactly where the leaks are, how can you actually fix it?
right.
So whenever somebody asks me those questions, like my friends, my family's like, hey, what about my personal finance? When can I invest money? I'm like, well, how much money do you spend per month? They don't know. How much money do you spend per year? They have no idea. And usually most people it's almost like they under calibrate what that is. Instead of maybe 60,000, they're like, well, I might spend $40,000. They'll say something like that, but they have 20,000 that they're actually spending more than they're not accounting for. On top of that, then you ask them, okay, so you don't know your expenses, and that's fair. Not everybody knows what their expenses are. However, how much do you bring in? And then everybody's like, I don't know. Like, how do you not know? Like, how did you miss that point?
Right.
First, you say you know what you make at work, but some people really don't. They
Mm.
started off years ago making a certain amount, but they stopped looking at it at all. They know that they get a raise, but they spend most of their raise because, hey, money comes in, money goes out. And we're seeing that with inflation right now. No matter what the raise that you're getting, if you're not learning to keep your money, you're losing out on actually building wealth in your lifetime.
Wow. Yeah, thank you for those good tips. Mint, Microsoft Excel, you can really track your expenses. Yeah, you can see a lot of things happening there. Maybe now you have your income up, you managing your spending, then you can do some saving and you can invest. So how to invest? You know, can you
How to invest?
talk about investing a little bit, if you
All
don't?
right. The investing is actually the trickiest part, because that's the sexiest term out right now. Everybody wants to invest. Everybody wants to make a certain amount of money by the time they reach I don't know, by the time they reach tomorrow, which is a problem, because that's not how investing works. Investing itself is a formula. Basically, wealth is the amount of what your total contributions times your rate of return times the time that you put in for it. So the length of which that you have your investments cooking for. So in essence, you have to put in a lot of effort, a lot of contributions up front to stack it up to actually have a good rate of return. And from that rate of return, you go into allowing it to process over time. The historical average of the stock market in the US is 8%. So sometimes they'll say 7 to 9%. Some people say 7 to 10%, but 9 times out of 10, when you do the average down the middle, it comes down to around 8% a year. So some years will be up, some years will be down, but the idea is that you keep investing using dollar cost averaging over and over and over again into any of these other means that I'm getting into. But ultimately, you have to allow it to grow for the totality of maybe 30 to 40 years in order for you to see the true wealth calcification impact. If you not do that, for example, a lot of people jumped into stock market in 2021 at the very end and saw that they lost a lot of money. Why? Because they only heard about this thing being hot right now, but so they ended up buying high and watching everything kind of melt away. and then they sell low, which is the opposite of what you're supposed to do when you're investing. You're supposed to buy low and sell high. When things are actually at their worst, that's the time if you have the extra cash to say, you know what, I use all these companies. I use like this, something like Amazon, something like Google, whatever it is. I like these companies. Why not invest in them while the market is down? That's the whole point. You buy things when they're on sale, and then you ride the wave with them all the way back up again. Never bet against human productivity and labor. That's something that Warren Buffett says all the time, because the idea is that every time the market recedes, there's always going to be an opportunity for you to jump in so you could ride the wave back up again. For the average American person, the first thing you need to consider is that you might already be investing. And their investments goes into your employer sponsored plans, your 401ks, your 403bs, 457bs. They exist as your job, and they're actually pegged to the market itself. So you don't have to go looking to invest 9 times out of 10. You're better off just, utilizing those employer sponsored plans, because they also offered an added benefit, and that benefit is tax reduction. That means for every dollar that you put into your 401k, IRA, and HSA, it would reduce your taxable income, which therefore reduces your potential tax liability. So that's another bonus that you get. On top of that, majority of employer-sponsored plans offer a matching contribution. That means a $1 to $1, 100% match. You cannot get that anywhere else. There's no place in the world where I give you $1, somebody gives you another dollar just because it exists. Right. And a lot of people leave that on the table to the tune of around $3,000 per year. Yeah, that don't sound like a lot for now, but over time, if that $3,000 is invested in the market over a good 30 years, it could total as much as $300,000 or even $400,000, depending how the market is doing. So you leaving $3,000 every year on the table is actually costing you $400,000. So the first thing I'd say is double down, make sure you read your employee handbook, figure out what your investments are already in your 401k, IRA, and HSA. And then you get to the point where you say, you know what, if I have extra now, I could play around with maybe 15% of the extra funds I have if you want to buy something like the Vanguard Total Stock Market Index. I bring up ETFs, that's an ETF. I bring that up because most people try to stock pick. And what ends up happening, especially in stock pickers, they lose. In the totality of the year, majority of stock pickers always lose. And it's just the way it is. It's called the reversion to the mean. Some years going to look really good, but then next year you go really down. However, if you want to get into investing without actually doing the qualitative or quantitative analysis and all the extra little legwork to figure out why to invest in this company and that company, you can actually invest in a bracket fund or a box fund. This like super like you going down the entire, instead of buying one thing at the store, you buy the entire store. Those are ETFs.
Those are index funds.
Yes, index fund, ETFs. Well, it's an ETF pegged to the index fund. Okay. The index fund is just your S&P 500, your Dow, your NASDAQ. Those are just measuring index funds where they're basically indices in which they're calculating a certain amount of like productivity throughout those companies. That's the easiest way I could say it. For S&P 500 is 500 companies. Think about it that way, that they're tracking the top performing 500 companies. And as they go up and down, in totality, in aggregate, that's what you're seeing. So I think the Dow is like 2,000. I want to say it's 2,000 companies that they're tracking, but everything else is kind of similar in that vein. So ultimately, the ETF is pegged to the S&P 500. That's the Vanguard Total Stock Market Index, and you don't have to do all the stock picking. Instead, you're just buying the fund and you riding the wave with human productivity.
Yeah. Wow.
It was literally created for that. The guy that created it, I want to say he created Vanguard. I forget his actual name, but he created it because he felt that the average American was being left out of investment. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times they were making mistakes by picking different stocks and they had no understanding about. So instead, he wanted to bracket those things in, create almost like a less fee structure to give people a better chance of really building wealth over time.
Wow. And those ETFs, they have good rate of return?
Yeah, typically ETFs are tagged to the market. So it's not about like one or two things that you're picking as far as rate of return, as much more that you're as the market goes up and down, you're with the market.
Right.
It's as easy as possible. So if the market is down, let's say this year, and you basically decide to buy into the market at a low, let's say if it was selling for $50, right? Uh, and then you just ride the wave for the next 20, 30 years, you find that that $50 will end up being as much as $2,000 in the long run. So what you do, you basically buy into a total market, right? Instead of buying into just one fund, one company, one business, because if that one business goes down, you go down with it.
Right. Wow. Yeah, these are great advice. This is awesome. So how about retirement? How do you prep for retirement?
Whoa, how do I prep for retirement? I think my dog is actually getting really like, man, I know how to prep for retirement. I know how to prep. Well, ultimately, the way you prep for retirement is actually going through making sure that you, one, know how much money is coming in and going out your house. We talked about that. If you don't know how to do that, then obviously, how can you plan for something you have no idea about? You need to know how much money you spend a year in order for you to forecast how much money you need for retirement. A lot of people are retiring. The majority of Americans are retiring with less than $300,000 in their for their savings. It's not going to be enough. The government knows it. The media has been sharing this information as much as possible that we're looking at a retirement debt crisis. That means people just don't have enough, and they're living longer and longer and longer. In for Black households and brown households, we're looking at people with less than $100,000 worth of retirement savings, which is
Wow.
very problematic.
Wow.
And that based on my calculations would last around like 5 to 6 years. But when it comes to retirement, for one thing, yeah, you do need to know exactly what your expenses are, and that's how you could forecast. You're making that plan. For while you're doing that plan, you basically, the simplest way to calculate how much money you will need for retirement, multiply, let's say $60,000. Let's say that's the amount of money that you spend per year. Multiply that by 25. That's going to give you a rough estimate how much money you need for retirement. How people are generally the financial advisors and other people help people through their retirement spending. How they do it is by taking whatever that abstract number is. Let's say for $60,000, and I could actually do the calculations here because that's the only way that makes sense to me. That is 1.5 million. 1.5 million, that's a good amount of money that you need to have in order for you to have retirement. Beyond that, what they do is take about 4% per year. Why? Because 4% is going to sustainably give you money throughout that, through every year in retirement, while your money is growing at 8%. So you're not basically dwindling the amount of money that you have on average in your account for the rest of your life. So at 4%, which that 1.5 million, you'll end up being 1.5. I'm actually doing this calculation live, guys, so don't fault me for it.
Yeah, that's good.
4%. You'll have $60,000 to live off of every year. So that's how you do it. You basically forecast how much you need. You multiply that by 25. You divide it by, or you multiply that by 4% withdrawal, and that's going to give you your withdrawal for the rest of the year. This is a little bit problematic because as you see, that expenses are going up and down every year. So by the time that people retire, let's say if you're a millennial, you're going to retire in 2040 or around 2045, 2050, what you're going to find is that $60,000 today will not be worth the same tomorrow. That $60,000 projected into 2040 or even a little bit beyond will likely be $120,000. So you need to also forecast as you're doing this to invest as much as possible. And this is why CNBC and Bloomberg are now looking at revised estimates to say that we will need around $3 million. Everybody will need about $3 million to retire, or a household would need that. So that $3 million is not going to come just from your Social Security, because Social Security is paying out on average around $30,000 per year.
Wow.
That's the amount that you're going to get from Social Security. If you're going to get that much from Social Security, you're going to be short from the amount that you're spending. And this is becoming why we have this problem. It's just not enough. And for everybody that doesn't have a plan now, especially if you're a millennial, a Gen Z, or if your parents don't have a plan and they don't have any money, or they're not saving for their future, what you're going to find is that you will be on the hook for every parent around $2,000 per month. So for every living relative that you have living in America into retirement, it will cost you $2,000 per month. For every person, that's around $24,000 a year. So if you have two parents and now you married and you have two more parents, you're looking at what 48 times two, which is like $96,000 in a year.
96, right.
That's a lot of money. Even if you split that amongst, for example, some people have like siblings, maybe they decide to split it, but it's still gonna cost you something, and that's a lot of money.
Wow. So we head into a crisis for retirement.
Yes, yes. And this is something that people should be aware of, should be thinking about, because the government is, well, just generally people know that this is going to be a problem, but there's almost no way to stop it besides, activating people and saying, hey, you need to look into your own retirement. This is why the government created things like the 401k, the 403b, 457b, to give people a heads up and say, hey, you have to take care of your own retirement. If you do not do that, you will come out short. If that coming out short might not seem like a lot, but for a lot of people, that means living with a relative in retirement. That means living in the basement.
Wow.
That means not going out as much. That means not doing a lot of things, because our expenses are slated to go so much higher that it's going to cost you a lot more than what you think is going to cost you today.
I also see a lot of people in retirement getting back to the workforce.
Yeah, that's what you're seeing now too, because they don't have any money. They're running out of money. They need the money, and they're realizing they planned it completely wrong. Because it's not just, and especially in the last 2 years, we saw a lot of retirement or investments actually sink in anywhere from 20%. So if you had $1 million, it went down $200,000 or something. So now you're at $800,000. That difference could be as much as 10 years in retirement. So you have to kind of make it back. So if you're not actually strategizing way before your retirement year as to how you kind of like de-escalate your risk profile, the investments that you're getting into, you're actually working it the complete opposite way. Yeah, I didn't want to scare anybody.
Yeah, no, it's good. So what's the solution? Is to invest in ETFs?
The solution, honestly, is to write down your goals. It sounds like the most boring part, and it sounds silly. It's like, wow, what is about the money? No, it's about a plan. Most people don't have a plan.
Right.
They don't know what they're doing the next 5, 10, 20 years. And if you're not writing that down, you're basically going nowhere. It's kind of like getting your car and having no direction to go, and you just say, I'm going to go somewhere. What does that mean? Like, where are you going? You're going to run out of gas at some point. Like, even if you just went left, you basically run into a roadblock or something that happens. You have to have a plan. So I think for every person individually, I would suggest that you write down your 5, 10, 20-year goal and just project, like, what's the ideal? What do you want to live by? What do you want to do? What do you want to create? What do you want to, what kind of impact you want to leave? Beyond that, you talk to your significant other. If you have one, you have them do the same thing, so you could share the plan together. And then you also talk to your kids, if you have them, to see what their plans are too. You never know what your kids' plan is. And it's a good opportunity for them to get involved in the family, and then also go beyond that, talk to your siblings and talk to your parents. So if they don't have a plan, now you all have to start working together to say, you know what, we all don't have a plan, and maybe it's time for us to realize, you know what, we're living a little bit too high there. We have too much debt, either be mortgage debt, credit card debt, or student loan debt. We have a lot of those. We need to tackle those down in order for us to build wealth enough that we could live off of. So the ideal is almost like you have, instead of starting at the end, you start at the very beginning, and you take it step by step with just a simple understanding of philosophy of what are your goals, what is the point. Your why will always carry you through the journey, and it actually opens up opportunities for you to actually grow, learn, and even develop better structures for yourself.
Wow. So owning a home, how can someone can build wealth with your home, with home
owning a home? Yes. I'll take my own personal example. Years ago in 2016, I purchased my first home here in the DMV. When I was buying a home, people say it was impossible to do it. You'll never get a home, so on and so forth. People like to say those things, but actually never do any work to figure out, is it even possible? The first thing I think I heard people say it's not possible, and maybe like a day later, I had a prospective home I was going to buy, and I basically bought it in a matter of 2 weeks.
Wow.
It was really that simple. It wasn't as crazy as like as dramatic as I made it out to be in my own head, and especially as other people made it out to be. It's almost like we're taking advice from people that don't even own a home.
Mhm.
It's the weirdest thing. It's like we're trying to own a home, but we're taking advice from people that never own a home about how hard it is to get a home, but they never did it. So yeah, so I've learned to that moment that's like, okay, I need to do that. So I purchased my home. At the time, I think I was spending in the DMV about $1,000 per month just on base rent, plus an additional maybe $250 from utilities. And I was staying in a 5-bedroom, 2-bathroom home, real home. So that was fine. At the time, I thought might have been cheap, but turns out I purchased my home and I had a 2-bedroom, 2-bath for $1,000 a month. Same amount of money.
Wow.
I actually owned a home. And I had more space because the what I had would likely what was 400,000 400 square feet. No, it wasn't for 400,000. It was 400 square feet, like the room that I had, and I had shared bathroom. But now I actually own my home for $1,000 a month, which is my mortgage and HOA combined, plus a little bit more for utilities, so on and so forth. Almost exact amount on the other side, but I had my own home. It was the wildest thing I ever said. And at that point, I was like, oh, guys, guess what? There's this area that has these homes and they're cheap. It's like, nah, I don't want to do that. I want to live next to the hot spot. I want to rent over there. So they stayed over there, which is, it's fine. They stayed, and I was like, all right, that's what you want to do. I ended up traveling the world. I met my wife. We did all that. We went to 12 countries in 14 days. While rent itself was climbing up. By the time I realized it, that same rent that's now in DC is around $2,700 per month.
Wow.
I'm like, what? It's like, and for everybody that says renting is almost like more preferable than owning a home, I think it's completely crazy because you're missing out on the opportunity of one also building equity in your home. During that time, the same home grew from 100, I guess it was valued at the time $125,000. Now it's $280,000. So if I wanted to really kind of like take the equity out the house at any time, that's fine. On top of that, there's another added bonus for a home. You also get tax breaks for it. So the mortgage interest that you pay to the bank is a tax break to you. So I'm getting a tax break for the home that I own. On top of that, this is another thing that exists in the tax code. There's capital gains. So what capital gains says is that as your own home approves in value, or whatever that word is, because English is my third language, it increases in value. What ends up happening is that as a single person, the profit of $250,000 is tax-free. Wow. Up to $250,000 is tax-free. That means that anytime I sell this home and it's valued in the net positive is $250,000, I'd get that tax-free. That's free money, just no taxes at all. On top of that, if you're married, it's $500,000.
Oh, wow.
So it's not only that you own this home and you're saving a lot of money while other people are spending more in their rental that they have right now, you're also using the extra money to invest more in yourself or invest more in the stock market, and that grows as well too. This is why me and my wife Next Works continues to grow, because we spend less on just the liability and we really pocket more of that money on assets.
Wow. Wow. So building home and help you build the home equity, build equity about on your home. I mean, owning your home equity. And then how about the mortgage insurance for people who have mortgages?
I don't have mortgage. You talk about is it mortgage PMI? You talk about PMI by any chance or something?
Right.
I don't have PMI.
Some people talk about, if you have a mortgage, make sure you have mortgage insurance. So if one day you cannot pay your mortgage, you have to.
Oh, I think this the PMI situation. Yeah, they call it PMI. I forget exactly the word that it stands for, but the idea is, this principal mortgage insurance. So the reason that you get saddled with PMI because they don't trust you. The bank look at you as like, hey, your credit's a little weird and you don't have a lot of money. I don't really trust you a lot, so therefore I'm gonna charge you this extra fee called PMI. I had never got into PMI because my credit was always pretty good. It's basically excellent. So I don't have PMI. For anybody that's going to buy a home, the golden rule is you should never buy a home that's no more than 25% of your total take home pay per month. So whatever that amount is, it should never equate more than 25% of your take-home pay. I think a lot of people fall into buying, hey, the dream home, the big home, the luxury home, or the home that's in this location that you definitely want, but they end up paying way more than they need to for a home, and it costs them in multiple ways. Either it costs them a mortgage that they can't really sustain on top of the mortgage because you can't sustain it, and the bank knows you can't sustain it. There's like, well, we know you can't sustain it. We're gonna add a PMI. Is that okay with you? And you're like, yeah, that's okay. And like, the bank's like, hey, because the bank is a co-borrower with you on the home. That's what that ends up being. The bank doesn't want to put their money on a losing bet. Why? Because if you cannot pay, the bank just repossesses the home, but the bank has to sell the home now to try to make their profit back. Right. This is why the bank is, tacking on the additional PMI, because they don't trust people. Like, they don't trust you if you're already buying way more home than you need. If you're buying the amount of home that you need and you're putting down enough deposit, you will not get saddled with PMI. But for anybody that has that, the best thing for you to do is start really crunching down your credit card debt, whatever it is, increase your cash flow. And from that additional cash flow, by the end of the year, always pay down as much of the PMI as possible until it's gone. Because that's extra money that you could be using to do anything from investing, from growing, or even paying down even more debt.
Wow. Yeah, that was good. That's interesting. So credit score. What's the importance of that?
Credit, we just talked about it. Yeah. Credit score is extremely important. Like, it makes it easier for you to buy a home, buy a car. Me and my wife, we just bought a car in a matter of like 3 days. Kid you not, we called the bank processed it. They looked at the credit score. They're like, I guess he's good. They rushed the documents, and we went to the dealership, and we bought a car just instantaneously. There was not a lot of work there. And we had what's the best thing about having good credit is also getting better rates, better interest rates. If you have bad credit, they tack on more interest rates for you, and it actually makes it worse for you in the long run. So part of the problem is people not fixing their credit in the front end to ensure that they're not paying as much interest on the back end. So your credit card is a reflection of your spending and your discipline. So if you have that issue, then it's up to you to kind of regulate yourself. It's not somebody else's fault that they gave you a credit card. Oh, the bank gave me a credit card. They set me up. Nobody sets you up. No, every time you click, it was all you. So in the end of the day, if you stop clicking, at that point, maybe start making more and more payments on it, you can improve your credit score. I could say this as well because I was a person that I think I missed 2 payments at the very beginning and after college, and my credit score went all the way down to 515. They didn't know how it happened, but it went down to 515. It was student loan payments. I had no idea that was coming because I was moving home to home or renting different places, and I missed it. And for some reason, after 2 months or even 3 months, they just basically said it was delinquent, and it dropped my credit score from whatever it was to 515.
Wow.
At that time, I thought it was over, but the more and more you just do what you need to do, the rest will improve itself, right? So over the next 7 years, of paying down my debts regularly or paying extra wherever I could, it ended up improving my debt to income ratio, and ultimately improves my credit score. And me and my wife's credit score is like north of 750. Hers is like 750, but she don't want me to say it. But mine's is like 830 or something like that. It's insane. Wow. But what we're finding now as well is that the banks are noticing the tricks that people are trying to pull on them, as far as like there's different little elements that people are trying to do. Mm-hmm. So banks are going towards FICO scores now. Mm-hmm. FICO scores are different from credit score. They take away all the little extra fluff, so it makes it more difficult for your credit worthiness to appear a certain way. So if you're just trying to like almost like shock job your credit score, trying to get that to happen fairly quickly, it's not going to work anymore. This is why when people go to the bank and the bank says, well, I thought my Credit Karma said I had 750. Well, based off what we see on the FICO score, you got 600. Mm-hmm. And this is what the number we're going to base it off of. So we have to get to a point where we get a little bit smarter about what credit scoring is, how to ensure that it's a process of having credit for a while, making regular payments, not having delinquency of derogatory marks, not having a lot of like almost like inquiries on your record, And the more and more you do that, the longer and longer it goes, you all get, I guess, near perfect credit scores. You do not have to pay somebody else for this. It's free advice.
That's true. That's true. So how to get out debt? You know, a lot of people have credit card debt, student loan
How
debt,
to get off debt? I
mortgage
guess,
debt. Is that
well,
that's part of financial literacy too, as well, right? It's
yes, it
something.
is part of financial literacy. How to get out of debt? That's a hard question because I guess the quote is the best way to get out of debt is not to get into debt.
Right,
That's like the best way to do it.
right.
But if you are struggling with debt, like I said before, there is a financial order of operations that people need to follow, which is available on my website. And also you can find it on the Money Guy show as well. They talk about it extensively all the time. There is a roadmap to do this. So the first thing you need to do is do that inventory review of your personal finance. The next thing you do is the actual budget to know what's going on. After the budget, you want to make sure that you're matching in your 401k, 403b, 457b to ensure that you're not like missing out on that free money. And beyond that, that's when you start tackling debt. How you tackle debt, you stagger it. Not all debt is created equal. So, for example, your credit cards are probably the highest interest that you're going to have on you at any given time.
Right.
Anywhere from 19 to 27% is the average, the range in which people have their credit cards, which is a lot. You
Yep.
want to be able to tackle that first. The next range, the next thing that we see is the car loans or even student loans are anywhere from like 6% and five, now it's like 5 to like 7%. That's where you're going to see some car loans, or 5 to 8% or something like that. So student loans and car loans are that much, and interest rates on homes are around like maybe 5 to 6% now as well. So you're kind of seeing that there's a difference in hierarchy. So you want to make sure that you're paying down your credit card debt first, because that's the one that's taxing you on a regular basis. So there are two ways to pay down, two generally accepted methods: the debt avalanche or the debt snowball. The debt snowball is the one that's most popular on social media or online, because Dave Ramsey really pushed it for a very long time, and that was kind of his bread and butter. It existed before him, but it's just something that he kind of shared with everybody, and people believe that he created it.
Mhm.
On top of that, the reason why is because it helps people pay down little small debts quicker to build confidence in the way that they pay down debt. That's why it exists. It's actually not the most efficient comparison to the debt avalanche, which tells you to organize your debt in the one with the highest interest. So you're knocking it down. And even if it takes the longest, that's the one that's giving you the most trouble versus the next one and the next one. You all basically, no matter which version that you're using, you're paying the minimum of everything, but you end up deciding, do you pay off a small one or do you pay off the one with the highest interest with the avalanche? For myself, I like the avalanche. I'm a math guy. I'm a logic guy. So I pay down the one with the highest interest or whatever it is, the most. And then in between, because I'm goofy like that, I just throw money at the one that's looking like the smallest. So at one point where my debt was astronomical, I'll see something like, well, okay, I have one credit card or something that's $200. You know what? I'll get rid of it this month. I don't have to stick to just one plan. I could modify and be flexible within myself to really enjoy the process and also have a good time at it. It's fun. I've always seen people be like, they follow somebody to the T, which is probably a problem. Like, be flexible, know when to kind of like, well, maybe I'm in an avalanche for a very long time. I feel a certain way. I can now knock out a very small debt to boost my confidence. Or maybe I'm on the debt snowball. I feel great about it right now. Maybe I can now bounce back to paying one with the highest interest a little bit more. So you shouldn't be beholden to any facet. You just need to know that you're paying down debt consistently.
Yeah. So interest rates, you talked about it a lot. And the Fed is raising some interest rate. So what's going to be the impact of that on financial services and financial products?
Financial services and products is going to increase all your it's always been doing that. They've been doing that since like last year in 2022,
Right.
where our inflation has been going up. The reason our inflation has been going up because we have too many dollars chasing too few goods. That's the simplest definition of what inflation is. That means all of us, like, there's maybe, let's say for example, just an example, spitball here. There's 5 TVs that exist in a town where like 100 people want it. Because 100 people want those 5 TVs, then the price of those 5 TVs go up. That's how that works. So when there's a lot of people going after too few goods, then the price of those goods go up. And that's what we're seeing in regards to the economy ever since late 2021. Why? Because we had the whole pandemic happen. We had a lot of stimulus money comes in. People were flush with cash. They wanted to spend it on items, and the items were running out. There were times where we couldn't even get iPhones because, oh, why? Because there's a supply chain issue. It's not around. So what happens on the black market or the natural market of people? Whoever has the iPhone or the PS5 or whatever it is, the price of that product goes up. So that's what happened with inflation. So when inflation came in, the Federal Reserve, which is not the federal government, there's two different entities. They sound the same, but they're not. The Federal Reserve comes in, and the thing that they can do is raise interest rate or pump more money into the market. It's a weird thing, but ultimately they could raise interest rate or lower it. So by raising interest rate, the goal is to kind of convince people to stop spending. But the problem is people say, you know what? I just want to spend. Like, I don't care. It's like, I don't, what we're finding in the late 2021 is that people started taking money away from their savings in order for them to spend. And into 2022, when they ran out of savings, what they end up doing is actually putting more money on credit cards in order to spend. So it's a really bad cycle for a lot of people because it's basically the generational poverty cycle. Like you can't do both at the same time. It's the worst thing you can do. So they're basically taking from their savings. So all they could do is just spend and continue spending. And when they run out of money, they spend more on credit. So the Fed is like, okay, we're going to raise rates to dissuade you from spending. But people are like, I still want to spend. This is what it is. So we're in a situation like we're playing chicken here, where every month or so we're trying to figure out where inflation is, so we could either raise or hold, because he's not going to decrease it. He's just going to hold it. And what's going to happen is that everything's going to be expensive for a while, so it could slow down people's spending and also slow down prices. Housing prices supposed to kind of taper off. Other prices on eggs, margarine, butter, bread, all that stuff starts tapering off because now there's people feel a little bit pinched for money and they want to stay home a little bit longer. So that is the goal with the Federal Reserve. They really want to try to help people, but we kind of have to help ourselves on this one, guys. Like, you need to stop spending.
Yeah. Wow. So yeah. So emergency fund, is that people say you need to have at least 4 to 6 months of emergency fund?
Yeah, people say a lot of those things. It's a lot of money. I've seen a lot of people so scared, especially in 2020. I saw a couple, which is they're like a financial couple or something, but they had over $100,000 in their savings. Why? Because they were so afraid of reality, because they've heard from so many other people they need to have a year, 5 years, 10 years, that they were carrying $100,000 where they could have actually made that money grow in their investment, their retirement, and in other things, to an absurd amount. That $100,000 could have at least been a good 300,000 if they just invested it. And literally just if they just invested it instead of actually keep holding on to it. So for me, I'm a lot more flexible, like I said before, with the emergency savings. I say that the average household to start off with should keep around $2,500 per adult person in emergency reserve for savings. Why? Because anything can happen. Somebody could break a leg. Somebody could, run out of this, yada, yada. It's just good to have $2,500 for a stability standpoint. And I think that works. That's something that it's a small barometer. It's something that's easy to achieve, easy to you set your mind to, and just put some money to it every time. You don't have to do it tomorrow. Doesn't have to be in a year, but it needs to be something that you work on in order for you to be financially stable. So for a family of two adults, that'd be $5,000. However, if you have kids, I double that and say, hey, for every kid, you need $5,000. So if you have one child, you got two parents and one child, that's $10,000. You got an extra child, that's 15. You got a third child, that's $20,000 in reserve, because anything can happen. The person could lose their job, yada, yada. A house, a leak could happen in the home. An AC could need a repair. Having a $20,000 is a precaution for you. I think having more than 6 months, 6 months for an average family is what? Well, 1 month for an average family is about $5,000. 6 months would be $30,000. sitting around on the side. Yeah, it's novel to have, but I think it's very difficult for the average family to even fathom or even get to that point.
Right.
So start where you can. You don't have to be like everybody else. Start with like that 2,500. I think that's good for an emergency for one person. Double that for another person, and then add an additional, almost like, quadruple that for a kid. So it ends up being 10 grand for a family of three. So ultimately, I think that's good. And from that point, if you are an entrepreneur or want to shift towards entrepreneurship, then I think that's when they say, hey, take around like a year or two in emergency savings, because you don't know if it's going to be profitable or not. That's what you do. You build and you have an emergency savings plan, not just emergency savings, because whenever something happens, like, it's not going to be your bank savings account that's going to help you. It's likely going to, when you go to the doctor, they look at you, where's your card? They don't say, hey, write me a check. It's like, you're going to pull out your card as soon as possible. So when you get that, if you have a plan, the plan should also include you having a credit card that has enough available balance to sustain you as well. So in order for you to actually pay for it in the moment and then pay it off when you get home with your savings account, so on and so forth. And on top of that, I'll say to anybody that's listening, if you have a savings account, make sure that you replenish it, because at some point you're going to use it. I get it, but you got to replenish it. You got to go back to, to ground zero to make sure that it comes right back up again, so you can be secure all over again.
Wow. So you talked about dollar cost averaging, as a way to invest. So what it is, if you want to expand a little bit on that, what is dollar cost averaging?
Wow, man. Yeah, I hear every word that I'm dropping here. Okay. Dollar cost averaging is, in simplest terms, is like you're just steadily buying into the market, no matter if it goes up or it goes down.
Right.
Especially with the way that we talked about before, when we're thinking about the buying an ETF that's pegged to the index. That's a fairly safe way to actually get into investing. Right. But you're also buying no matter what the interval of the market is. When you stretch out the market, because you can see a chart of its performance. It's like a mountain going to the right and up. That's how it looks like the entire time. Yeah, if you shorten it down, you start seeing some downfalls. But the analogy that I remember is kind of like walking up a hill with a yo-yo. Yeah, the yo-yo goes up and down, but you're walking up the hill. So at some point at the top of the hill, you still be further up wherever your yo-yo is, no matter if it's in your hand, lower to the ground, whatever it is. So that's the idea of the market. You buying in at any given interval, no matter if it's down, no matter if it's up, and you'll be able to do that consistently for whatever interval that you want. For example, the way I shared with other people to get into investing, I say at the end of every year, decide how much you want to invest the next year, right? Let's say if it's $12,000, and just say that's, well, let's just cut it down to $6,000. Mm-hmm. Let's just say, I don't have a lot of money, but this year coming up in 2024, I want to invest $6,000. You think $6,000 divided by 12, that's monthly, that's $500 monthly. Mm-hmm. So you pick a day, I don't care if every second Tuesday or whatever it is, and that day you deposit money and you also invest every time. And that's the way you do it. That's dollar cost average. You just consistently invest no matter what's going on. Mm-hmm. Tune your head out. Just keep going.
Wow. That's good, actually. That's a great system. So
yeah, it's just a simple thing.
For someone out there who wants to, be like Lawrence. Lawrence is very well versed in finance. You want to be someone who want to learn, become a financial literate. So what are the steps and what are some of the resources? Where are the best places they can go to learn about it?
Hey, you're coming in all the hardest questions known to man. If in order for you to become financially literate, it's going to take time. The same amount of time that it took us to get into financial trouble, it will take that much time and even longer to become a little bit more literate and also more proficient. If it was easy, everybody would do it. Yeah. It's not a path for everyone, but it's a path if you want it. If you want to accept that road, you could kind of go down that road, and you find that the more and more that you do what you need, it'll always open up to all the windows to doing what you want. But if you do it in reverse, like you do what you want and try to do what you need, you end up always broke in that scenario. So with that being said, I think the first couple of things you could do is actually having a financial plan. I do offer me like for free a financial plan that's available on my website. There are other people that are. I think there's a lot of other financial plans that exist. You can find it online at any given time. You can even follow Dave Ramsey. There's a big person that provides financial plans. You
Okay.
got the Money Guy show that they provide financial plans as well. So there are ways to do it, but I think that's the first start. You have to have a plan. If you do not have the plan, you cannot really work the plan. You can't go anywhere. Another thing that I did at the very beginning is listen to different podcasts and such as yourself or even YouTube channels and try to glean into these people. I don't say to do a blind devotion of people. I'm saying listen with the person and kind of take notes of what worked for them and understand why it worked. So then you could say, you know what, maybe it's not going to be exact same path I'm going to take as Lawrence, but maybe I'm going to take a path that's a little bit tweaking here, a little bit tweaking there, so it can actually work for me. I think that's the difference. I didn't fall into, hey, I'm a Robert C. Kiyosaki guy because I read that one book, Rich Guy for Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It's weird. I'm like, seriously, that's the only book you read? Like, did you stop reading after that? Because there's other books. A book that I personally love, like I think is one of the A+ books in the world right now, is Atomic Habits. Masterpiece. Mm-hmm. You read that, it will change your mindset and it will hopefully change your discipline and ultimately change your life. I think that's one of the best books out there. Another book is called The Psychology of Money. Really good book about how we come to the point where we have our money habits, our structures are bad, the bad parts, the trauma that we carry along with money, or even how we kind of move away beyond that. I would say additionally, there are people on YouTube like Investing with Rose is one of the better people that teaches people how to like investing one-on-one. Instead of going to somebody, I'm a day trader, I'm gonna tell you which one is up, which one is down. Relax. I rather listen to the person that's like, hey man, you're still here with me. You're still calm down. The people that's sweating and they have like that, they're so hyped to tell you something. It's not the kind of person I listen to. Maybe that might be somebody else's vibe, but that's just not the thing for me. I like a calm, relaxed approach. I like long term. I like the food to simmer, as they say, because that's gonna give you the better food. So these are the things that work for me. The Money Guy show, which I said a few times, was probably one of the few podcasts I think will stand the test of time because they are very much they're professional. They're CFPs, they're CPAs, they're CFAs, and I also believe another person is CIA. All these are actual certificates. So it's the accounting one, the financial planner one, the internal auditor one, the financial advisor one. They have all of them, and they're actually very down-to-earth people that shares the same amount of information, if not more than I do.
Wow. I can't wait for your podcast too. You know, we can
yeah. We also got the podcast, but some people walk in our podcast like, I thought you was gonna talk about money only. We talk about our stories. Because I'm from like I said before at the very beginning, I grew up in Haiti. We grew up around like, the lights would kind of cut off majority of the time. There's rolling electricity there. So we basically sit around. It wasn't a campfire like you see on TV in the American version of it. It's just like, it's in Creole we call it laku, and it's hard to say in what is it like? I would say it's like the courtyard. Yeah, that's what they call it. It's the courtyard. The family, friends, whatever would gather in the courtyard and we'll just share stories. And that's how we used to learn, how we should learn about different things. So that's kind of the vibe you'll get from our podcast. Me and two co-hosts would just talk about relative issues that's going on, or even how these issues are affecting us on an interpersonal level. Or we even bring in other guests and we just talk about like how to process money. Sometimes we get deep, sometimes we get really light about it, but the goal is to really have a human experience when it comes to money, instead of it being, hey, invest, well, I could tell anybody can become a multimillionaire pretty quick. Invest in your 401k, IRA, HSA, save as much as $30,000 a year in taxable income, grow it around like 8%. You'll get there around 17 years, you'll be a millionaire. In about 20 years, you'll be a multimillionaire. So I could tell you all this stuff all the time, but in the end of the day, it doesn't, for some reason, it doesn't gel. As much more. The goal is to really understand that it's not the money, it's the person that changes. It's our relationship with money that really deserves the attention that we want out of ourselves and out of our lives.
Wow. Why we don't teach this in high school? Why don't teach this in college? Like financial literacy.
Why don't they teach this in they taught all of this. And I always tell people, like, there's a lot of things they taught in school that majority of people didn't care to learn.
Mhm.
Because even to this day, when somebody said, "Why do you teach personal finance in high school?" I'm like, "So what? Who's the third president of the United States?"
Mhm.
Blank. Like they taught this every year. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a lot of stuff they taught that
Mhm.
we just in the moment we just didn't care about. It wasn't as interesting. It wasn't cool. And then that postulate creates another like confusion narrative, right?
Mhm.
Like the teachers don't know how to do personal finance. So how can they teach you how to do
Right.
personal finance if they don't know how to do it themselves?
Yeah.
So there's like it's almost a full circle that society has to change and start valuing how we use money, how we process money, and information, learning, and understanding. So this kind of recording right now that's happening is very much something you could rewind, listen to, and allow yourself to sink in to this information because that's how you're going to change. But if we have like TikTok 5-second reels, how do you think somebody has an attention span to learn anything personal finance?
Yeah.
It's just not going to be enough.
Yeah.
We have to get to the point where we understand that this is, you have to sit with the information, you have to understand it. And you also have to say, hey, at what point in your life, when I met people that are 40, 50, that's like, oh, they should have taught me this in high school. So what did you do for the last 30 years though?
What did
You
you
know, like,
do after high school?
like what happened exactly? It's like, so you tell me you didn't learn it in high school, but yet afterwards, like,
That's true.
like, give me a little bit more. So at some point, I challenge people to really take ownership
Yes.
of where we personally lacked,
Yes.
where we dropped the ball, when we thought it wasn't cool, it wasn't important. We just didn't care. We pressed the button every time. Every time we saw the app, it says Uber Eats extra charge. We're like,
Yep.
extra charge for me. Like,
Just buy. Amazon.com, Uber,
yeah, it's like even if they
all
taught
the
you
apps.
personal finance, you wouldn't know it. And they did, because personal finance is or financial literacy is a combination of a couple different fields and disciplines, right? Either it be arithmetics, which is fairly much common in there, which we all learned or should have learned, which for some reason we have it in college again because people didn't learn it for some reason. Logic, critical thinking,
Mhm.
creativity, even art could be part of personal finance. You start drawing out outlines in your head, writing, understanding, or government, because that's where it comes into taxes and so on, or civics. All of that stuff,
Yeah.
roll that stuff up into it, and that's what's personal finance. So these things are not like these separate disciplines that we separate them out to be. We're supposed to teach kids to use all disciplines to create knowledge
Wow.
or create new knowledge.
Hey, Lawrence, I can talk to you forever. I know you have a busy schedule. This was very interesting. Obviously you are a great person. I really appreciate your time. Looking at your LinkedIn profile, you have a lot of experience. You have, you know, decades of experience in financial analysis, tax auditing. You publish more than 400 plus resource materials. I just want to thank you for all you're doing out there. It's just awesome. And also your website, we showed in the beginning. People
Yeah.
can go there, check what you're doing. Yeah, this is just, I hope I can have you again next time to dive more on other topics. But um, this was awesome. Thank you so much.
No, this was definitely awesome. I think it was thank you for inviting me and anytime, because that's what I like to do, share as much information, because nobody was there for me when it happened. And I don't want to be that person for some that isn't there for somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, coming from where you come from, like you said, I mean, you talked a little bit about, traveling more than 25 countries, talked about Haiti. So merci beaucoup. Merci.
Yeah, yeah. De rien
So,
policy.
all right, see you next time. Bye-bye. Thank
Thank
you.
you.